What's up, nerds? My name is Steve from Flipping the Nerd, and this is my top 10 favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger films. I am a huge fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I have seen every single one of his movies and will continue to do so as long as he's making them. It's just one of those actors that I've been watching since my childhood, and I've just always enjoyed his performances and his movies. I mean, they're not like the best acted, they're not necessarily the best like cinematography or direction or anything. They're just a lot of fun. And movies, they should be about fun. Sure, sometimes I like to watch something that's really well shot, really well told, really well acted, but sometimes you just want to sit back and enjoy the ride, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is the man when it comes to that. So before I get into my top 10, of course I'm going to have a couple honorable mentions, 5 in particular. So the first one would be Expendables 2. I love the Expendables series, but to me that's more of a Sylvester Stallone series rather than a Schwarzenegger series, because he only really appeared briefly in the first one. He was there a little bit more in the second and third, but I see more of a Stallone film. That's why it's not on my list, but other than that, it's an amazing story. Not an amazing story, but an amazing film. Just a lot of fun to watch, a lot of action, and it's so cool to see all of my favorite action stars kind of come together for this one movie. So it's fantastic and would definitely make my top 10 if I considered it a Schwarzenegger film, which I don't. Another one I would say is Maggie. Maggie is one of his latest films. It's about Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose daughter is slowly becoming a zombie, kind of, or an infected, depending on how you look at it. I don't think the movie was actually that great, so in that regard, it wouldn't be on my top. But the reason I want to mention it in my honorable mentions is because I feel that it's one of the best acted Schwarzenegger films that I've seen. He really plays a convincing, troubled father who's really trying just to do the best for his daughter, and that's why I wanted to mention it. It's one of the best Schwarzenegger performances, but that's not what this list is about, so that's why it's an honorable mention. Then we have, and you guys are going to love this, Batman and Robin. I know this movie gets a lot of flack, but the more I watch it, the more I enjoy it. I really feel that there's a place for a really campy Batman like this one. I get it, the flaws are numerable in this film, the bat nipples, the bad credit card. There's a lot of things that are awful about this movie, but one thing that I did enjoy is Arnold Schwarzenegger's performance as Mr. Freeze. It is campy as hell, the dialogue is absolute garbage, but because Schwarzenegger is the one who delivers it, I enjoy every minute of it. It's just funny to me. He's just a great villain. But again, not a Schwarzenegger film. It's more of a Batman film. I guess a George Clooney vehicle if you really want to look at it that way. But I wanted to mention it because I do like Arnold's performance in it. Then we have The Sixth Day. The Sixth Day is about a clone. And it's just an interesting story how it plays with what, could happen if you have clones, and I like the way Schwarzenegger approaches it in this film, and that's why I want to at least give it a nod in this list. But not the greatest film, but still an enjoyable movie nonetheless. And finally, another honorable mention, and I really toyed between my number 10 and this one, but I decided to knock it down, and I'll talk about it when I hit my number 10, and that's Eraser. A movie where Schwarzenegger erases people's lives and kind of puts people into kind of a witness protection program. I really enjoyed it. It was a really cool film. It just didn't have enough memorable moments for me to put it in my top 10, but it was real close. So I definitely wanted to mention it. So let's get into it. My top 10 favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger films. Number 10. Jingle All the Way. This should not be on my list. It's a pretty bad movie when you really look at it. The dialogue is garbage, the acting is campy and just not good, the story is pretty stupid, but because Schwarzenegger is in it, I enjoy it, and I watch it every single Christmas. Phil Hartman is really funny in it. I gotta give a huge shout out there. but the movie itself is just not good, but I enjoy it anyway. It's just one of those super guilty pleasures, and I always have to watch it around Christmas time. It really captures the frantic nature of trying to get that like perfect toy for Christmas, and that's why I enjoy it, and that's why I put it into my number 10. So it's not the greatest film, definitely, but it does crack my top 10. Number 9, End of Days. This again is not one of the more popular Schwarzenegger films, but as a horror fan, until Maggie, I guess, this is the closest thing that Schwarzenegger made to a horror film, and I kind of enjoy it. I like the apocalyptic nature of the film. I like the big visuals and the big demons, and Schwarzenegger playing kind of a darker role than he usually did. I really enjoyed End of Days, to be honest with you. Sure, it's got, again, really bad dialogue, which is kind of what Schwarzenegger's thing is, but the way he delivers it is so good that it's awesome for that. But overall, I did enjoy End of Days, and I do think it deserved a spot in this list. Number 8, The Running Man, based off a Stephen King short story, I believe. I think it's one of his Bachman books. I don't remember if it came out as its own book, but anyway, The Running Man. I love The Running Man. It's such a cool film. Really good at predicting kind of what the future was like with reality television. I mean, this thing was in the 80s, and it kind of showed what reality television could become. Now, of course, they don't kill people in reality television, but I'm not all that convinced that it won't one day, because people are trying to push the envelope and push the envelope. There's a lot to like about this film. I like the really wacky characters that he has to encounter throughout this reality show. There's one that's like an opera singer, and then there's Jesse Ventura, who plays like the former champion. It's just awesome. Richard Dawson as the host of the show. It's a really fantastic movie, and I really enjoy watching it, so it definitely had to be on my top 10. Number 7, Commando. Now, you talk about having a film that's full of testosterone, full of action, and just full of raw power. Commando is that film. This is one of the quintessential Schwarzenegger films. It's you often see the picture of him kind of with the big machine gun and the big muscles. It usually comes from this movie, from Commando. It's still got a touching story, you know, it's the whole thing with his daughter and everything, and it's got a cool villain, but Commando is just one of those really kind of almost poster child action films of the 80s. So I really enjoyed it, and it definitely deserved a spot on the list. Number 6, Kindergarten Cop. I love Schwarzenegger when he does comedies, and this is my favorite one of his comedies. He also did Junior, he did Twins, but I think Kindergarten Cop is the best of his comedic performances. And there's so many great lines in this movie. Put the cookie down. It's not a Tuma. My personal favorite is one that you don't hear a lot, but it's when at the beginning of the film, he's trying to convince the kind of bad guy's girlfriend to find information about him. And her name's Cindy, and he's just like, I'm going to stay here forever until... It's just this whole crazy scene, and I absolutely love. The particular line, I love you, Cindy. It's so funny. This whole movie is hilarious. I absolutely love Schwarzenegger in this role because it's so different from everything else he had made. And yeah, this was definitely had to be on the list. Number 5, Last Action Hero. Now, Last Action Hero is an interesting movie because it is completely balls to the wall, just out there. There are cartoon characters that live in this world, and it's about a guy who idolizes a Schwarzenegger-like character in a movie, and then he goes into the movie, then those characters come back into the real world. It's just a crazy movie. I mean, they meet Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movie. It's a completely crazy adventure that by all accounts shouldn't work, but it just does. It's really, really cool. I just really, really enjoy this movie. It's fun. It's light, it's got action, it's got comedy, you know, and this is a thing that happens in a lot of Stallone and Schwarzenegger films where they reference each other. In this one, The kid's trying to prove to the Schwarzenegger character, I forget what his name is, that he's not real, so he shows him Terminator, but in his world, Terminator is Stallone instead of Schwarzenegger. It's really crazy, it's really fun, and it's definitely an enjoyable flick, and it absolutely had to be on the list. Number 4, Predator. Now, this is definitely the closest thing that Schwarzenegger meant to a horror film. I didn't think about it when I was talking about Empty Days, but Predator, of course. Now, I feel that when people think of Predator, they don't necessarily think of Schwarzenegger, which is weird because he's the star of it. You kind of just think of, the Predator monster, because there have been so many sequels and remakes and crossovers with aliens and all that stuff that when people think Predator, I think they forget that it's a Schwarzenegger film at its core for the first one. But I definitely didn't, because that's how I got introduced to this cool character, which was the Predator. And they're making really cool films to this day with that character. So it really started something special. And it all comes down from this film, and I absolutely adore it. It's a fun film. It's it's a little scary. It's creepy. It's sci-fi. It's horror. It's all sorts of things mixed together. But in the end, it's an awesome Schwarzenegger film. So that's why it's on the list. Number 3, Total Recall. I love Total Recall. It's another one of those crazy action films where a guy, he's lonely and he doesn't really like his life. He's not happy with his wife and stuff. So he goes into a program that simulates an experience which brings him to a planet he's always wanted to visit, which is Mars. And it's this whole trippy adventure where you don't quite know if it's real or if it's part of the recall program, which is the kind of simulation is in. And that goes all the way to the end, where it's got this crazy ending where you actually don't know was it all real or was it all part of the recall program. Now, in my opinion, it was all part of the recall program, because it happened exactly as they had described when they're talking about what's in the package of that program. But who knows? Maybe it was reality, maybe it was fiction. And having that kind of, up in the air ending and just a fantastic, movie throughout really put this up a notch, and I absolutely adore it for it. Not to mention, it's just a cool film. I love everything that's on Mars. The creatures are really cool. You could tell they're practical effects. There's just a lot to love about this film, and it's something that every time I watch it, I see something different and something that makes me love it even more. So this could even, if the top 2 films are so damn good, but this one could be on the top of anybody else's list. But because Schwarzenegger makes such awesome films, it sits here at number 3, and it's very well deserving of that spot. Number 2. This is probably the film that everyone would expect as my number 1, but actually isn't, because I would think a lot of people would put it at their number 1, and that's, of course, Terminator 2. I think Terminator 2 is the best of the Terminator films by far, in my opinion, and I only put one per franchise because I think Terminator 1 and maybe even Terminator 3 would all hit this list if it wasn't for that. But my one per franchise rule puts Terminator 2 right smack at number 2. It's one of the best, easily one of the best sci-fi / action stories and films of all time. Everybody is good in this film. Linda Hamilton absolutely kills it. The special effects for the time were fantastic. And even if you watch it now they're not amazing, of course. It's been, 30 years since this movie came out. But they still hold up pretty damn good. I mean, they're still passable, and that's saying a lot. James Cameron just did an incredible job with the film, and Schwarzenegger is better than ever as the Terminator. This is a fantastic film, and if you haven't seen it, which I think you would have if you're watching a top 10 Schwarzenegger film list, but you need to watch it. Terminator 2, one of the best films of all time, let alone one of the best Schwarzenegger films, but not quite there. Number 1. James Cameron hits it again, True Lies. I love everything about True Lies. The action, the comedy, the acting, everything. I love everything about True Lies. The villain is good, the characters are good, the story, progresses really well. I love his sidekick in Tom Arnold. I absolutely love Jamie Lee Curtis as his wife, and it's just, oh my god, this movie is so damn good, and on so many levels. The spy scenes between, and how he's like, oh, and my god, Bill Paxton as the typical car salesman is just the best. He is the slimiest character maybe in history of cinema, and I am all for it. Schwarzenegger, of course, kills it in this film. He's funny, he's charming, this is one of the best action films of all time, if not the best action film of all time. I enjoy the hell out of it, and it boggles my mind why we never got a second one, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that was a story they wanted to tell, and there wasn't anything else to tell, but I would have loved to see like a full-on Jamie Lee Curtis / Schwarzenegger action film where they go, I don't know, save their daughter again, or whatever the case may be. I would have loved to see a sequel, but as a film, this one is the hands down my champion for the best Arnold Schwarzenegger film. I'd love to know what you guys think about it. What's your favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger film? What do you think of my list? And let's talk about it in the chat. That would be awesome. Next week, I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite restaurants at Walt Disney World. It's a passion of mine. I love going to Disney World every year, sometimes twice. I've been to most of the restaurants, so I can't wait to talk about that. Check out the other ones I did. I did 4 or 5, 6 in the past. I'm going to release them every week for the rest of the year. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all on the